what you were saying earlier with regard to remote work. I'm curious what your thoughts are. I mean, you've been on both sides of the coin now. What are your thoughts on how you approach it as CEO?
So there's definite challenges. There's benefits, right? One of the ones that we have is that we don't let borders determine our talent, right? So I'm not stuck to my geography and saying I can only do this talent pool. So that I appreciate, and I think that brings a huge richness, I could say, for Percona, right? We have a huge richness of cultural diversity, which helps making sure that you're innovative, right? You need to not look the same. That said, I also struggle with making sure that our teammates don't get isolated, because there is a bunch of fatigue that can come if your interaction is always either a Zoom call or even just instant messaging. So it's those words, not even, I've been doing this so long that I even just said to a colleague this morning, they sent something over Slack and a writing, and I said, I could hear you say that word. Like I literally heard his voice on a specific word. I'm like, oh, I have more voices in my head now. But I worry, I do worry for early career folks. And this is just my own personal experience. There's, like you said, that mentoring, just seeing how people interact with one another, seeing how people that are effective, I mean, how much do you learn and say, ooh, I'm not going to do that? I mean, there's the positive, but there's also the, oh, that didn't work out so well. Or just those quick interchanges of saying, hey, can you look over my shoulder? Can you show me something like that? So I'm a huge proponent of remote work. Like I said, we've been successful with that, and it takes a lot of work. And we make sure that we budget for in-person team meetings that there is a craving for. And then sometimes, I mean, because of my role, I travel more than the average Perconian would travel. But I get it. Like I get what happens when I first started working remote. I'll say my friend who introduced me, she did say, I'm not sure, Ann, you're a little bit too type A. I don't know that you'll be able to handle working remote. Like it's like, what does that mean? Right. But okay, right. Like I figured it out, but there is some kind of blend. I think there's a blend. How some companies, and again, I haven't sat in their boardrooms or their executive meetings where they're like, you're now all in person, right? Like bam, like, oh, okay, maybe there was a little bit of a PR. Hearts and Minds could have been one a little bit better, but there is a need for the human contact even in an all remote setting.
Well, so talk a little bit about your path. So you're now CEO of a company. You made decisions along the way. I'm curious how you got into technology in the first place.
Well, I say I fell into it. In a former life, I was in banking, traded currency. I did retail banking, commercial lending, traded currency. And then I took an 8-year break from my career when I started my family. So when the youngest was going to kindergarten, I'm like, the gig is up. The gig is up. My husband started his own business, and I'm like, someone needs healthcare. We live in the United States. I'm like, someone needs healthcare. And my neighbor worked for MySQL AB. And at the time, I'm like, I need a job. And I thought of it as a job, not a career move. And I had the good fortune that I got in with the MySQL professional services team. But when I started my interview, they were MySQL. And during that time, the Sun announcement happened. So I never worked for MySQL. I worked for the team in Sun, and then Oracle when Oracle bought Sun. And then I moved over to Percona 11 years ago, just from contacts that I had. And so I am not a technologist. So I joke, I play one on TV. Here we are. I'm playing one on TV again. I just have had the opportunity of working with amazing folks. That's why I love open source, and just learning along the way, and just having every step of the way. I've just had various opportunities to continue to learn and grow and have a seat at the table.
So what would you say was perhaps, you decided to get into, in kind of a serendipitous way, get into technology, but as you were moving your way through, what what roles did you find were more beneficial than others? I know we've had conversations where folks had been on the support side, and that kind of helped them understand customers more, or there have certainly been people who have been that we've talked to have been programmers and kind of worked their way through product teams and ultimately client engagements. What did you find kind of most beneficial as you were moving through your career, your early career in technology?
Because I was in the professional services group, I got exposed to experts, global experts in a technology that just was expansive, right? Just like, whoa, like this is not something I've ever had exposure to or thought about. So because they were also customer facing, I got that blend of understanding the criticality of the work that we do on the technology side and how it actually impacts sometimes to the individual. I mean, the unfortunate, maybe fortunate, unfortunate, couple months back, I spoke to a client of ours who has his career has taken him to different companies. He's always been pulling Percona along. Why is that? We literally saved his job one night because he dropped a table, but put in the wrong thing and was in a panic and called, and our team was able to talk him through, help him through that. So exposure to that tech side, and I would say I've been in open source this whole time, and I didn't know anything about open source, frankly, right? Like knew nothing about it, but just that the camaraderie and the collaborative nature in the fact that there's healthy conflict, like everybody has an opinion. Holy cow. Everybody has an opinion and they feel comfortable voicing their opinion. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, but it's also pretty fascinating. So that's helped me just because of how I learn, and I love hearing other perspectives and growing that way. I've been given that experience, and by starting on the services side of the house, if you will, collecting people that I can use then as references to help me understand, or, okay, I don't understand this. I'll go talk to somebody and say, let me repeat it back to you. Am I saying this right? Whatnot. So that's been super helpful for me because it's a cross between the internals and the externals, customer and tech. It's been a great opportunity for me.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask your thoughts on being a woman in technology. You're a leader in a technology sector, and we hear it at Solutions Review quite a bit, particularly when we're organizing events and pulling together panels that we need to have more women represented, and we go out of our way to do just that. But sometimes it's very hard for us to find women, and we also know from just our audience and understanding that there is an imbalance, and you can't deny that there is an imbalance in technology with regard to gender. What was your experience, and kind of do you have any advice to young women who are getting into the technology sector, and was there any learning or maybe anything that you weren't too fond of as you went through?
Well, I would say that we're all a product of our experiences, right? And whatnot. So I think starting back to me being a child, I have some things that have helped me be in male-dominated situations, because when I do reflection, interestingly, I always have been somehow. But I think part of it is I played team sports as a child, and I don't want to make a gross generalization that males do team sports, because that's not the case. But I was socialized similarly, so I can understand the individual contribution and being a team player is hugely important. I also happened to go to an all-girls high school, so being and I was in the sciences. I did well in math and whatnot, and having teachers call out, and like I didn't have socially, you didn't really have to care about the boys or anything like that. Like it's just all girls, AP classes, take whatever. I had a calculus teacher who senior year in high school is like, you're going to go to college. You're going to be with boys. And that was her word, not mine. You're going to be with boys. They're going to be intimidated by you. And I was thinking like that, what is she talking about? Sure enough, I experienced that. And I was like, oh, she's right. But I was like, I'm no different than he is. Like, I can do math. Like, what's the big deal? So for me, it was a little bit, I had that good fortune of being normalized. But having that level, I think, even though there's times where you have self-doubt or I've had self-doubt, just being confident, like, I'm me. I have something to contribute. I've been supported and encouraged throughout. And I think it's just a matter of really trying to find your voice. Like I said, in college, I helped start a credit union. I was like the only female in some of the sessions. When I was on the trading floor for banking, again, the representation was lower. I'm proud to say here at Percona, our executive team, I'm a female, our CTO and our CFO are all women. And I credit that to the culture that the founders started, right? The right person for the job and making sure that we really think that way and look that way. And it's not always easy, right? I represent females, sure, but I'm also white American. So I understand that there's some lack of diversity on that as well and how to be mindful. But just, having the understanding that you belong. And if there's, he says there are some things that you don't like. I've called out behavior before but never in a way of like, it was threatening to just like, hey, awareness, that's not appropriate. Or I'm not one of the guys, right? Whatever that might be. So I'd like to see that we continue to have diversity. Again, just for diversity of thought, the data shows, right? There's been enough studies that show that it improves performance. So I feel fortunate for the opportunities I've had.
So it hasn't felt to me that there's a kind of a negative pressure on women in technology. It just feels that there's just it's almost like it's been a natural selection of interest where more men have ventured into technology than women have chosen to. I don't believe it doesn't feel like there's a discrimination necessarily. As a matter of fact, it feels almost like there's a lot of encouragement to when there are women kind of emerging, that's a good thing, and everybody wants to see more of it. But I don't know. Have you seen anything that would represent that? Or
well, I would say that there are still a lot of biases, and some of them are unconscious biases in studies that have been done. For example,
biases in what way?
So you're saying like that maybe the interest of there's not an interest for girls to go into computers or something like that. There is a bias that's been shown even in schools that if it's a math class and two kids raise their hand, one's a boy, one's a girl, the teachers tend to call on the boy, not the girl.
Oh, interesting.
So I think that while those sorts of barriers need to be broken down, that there's stereotypes that continue to be perpetuated that we just need to really be mindful of all across diversity. Whether it's how folks that are neurodivergent versus neurotypical, and what is the workplace or the schooling, how do we account for those differences? There is still things there. And while some of them I haven't experienced, I have been there where I live. There's a Gorge Technology Group. They have a Women in STEM. They showed a movie and I was listening to this panel talking, and there's some people like in their 30s where women, they're like, yeah, no, that discrimination from the 50s, I just experienced it last week. And I was like, really? Like that's, so there's still societal pressures that we need to just be mindful of, because I don't know that my individual experiences are common for others.
No, and obviously everybody has their own experience. So I think it's going to be fascinating, and to kind of bring it full circle, I think in the AI revolution, I don't think I don't think the impact is going to be gender based. I think, I think it's going to
No,
be I think it's going to be human based versus I don't think it's going to it's kind of like the Terminator, right? The Terminator speech. It doesn't feel pity. It doesn't care about your feelings or whatever it is. It's like it's
right.
just going to it's
Yeah.
going to impact across the board, and it might well be that. I think the great irony is that the most impacted initially will be in IT, so it might be maybe a little disproportionate in its impact across genders, but we'll have to see.
What do we say? Yeah.
Well, this has been great.
Yeah.
Um, Thanks very
Thank
much for the time today,
Likewise.
and best of luck with all of the work that you're doing at Percona.
Thank you. Appreciate
Sounds
that.
like you're on. I think we're all on the precipice of an amazing time, and we'll continue to track things at Percona, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk soon.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Doug. Have a great day.